Hello everyone. We have today second webinar, or we call it workshops related to Triumph LS product. My name is Eugene Aksionov. I'm IT director of the company, and I will help to our presenter Shawn Billings to continue this series. We will talk about Triumph LS Plus, which is kind of next generation of Triumph LS product, and it is generally a different product internally from hardware point of view. We have multi-constellation antenna. We have a new ASIC there. We have solved some Wi-Fi issues which increase performance of the unit from Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connections. And let's talk about scenario of this workshop. We have 25 minutes of presentation first, and then 20 minutes about questions you can ask. We have let your ability to ask any questions by audio, and if you can't use controls for questions, you can type these questions, we will read it. We have already some few questions while registration received, and we will start answering on those questions in first turn. We'll record this audio and video stream, and if you're expecting some troubles from connectivity point of view, and don't worry, we're gonna have full quality video on the Friday approximately. We will get it completely, and we'll be able to get it from YouTube and our social media and other sources. Watch our websites for news about that. So now I wanna introduce our presenter, Shawn Billings, who is a professional land surveyor from Texas. He is a founder of Pendulum Surveying. He is famous person from magazines point of view, and there's many of articles that he wrote for different magazines. He is staying with in the beginning of our Triumph LS and VS product, and that's contribute a lot of his passion and knowledge into the design of this product and conception of this product. So please welcome Shawn Billings.
Thank you, Eugene. It's great to be back presenting another webinar on the Triumph LS, and it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. So without any further delay, let's get started.
Hello, I'm Shawn Billings, surveyor in East Texas, and it's great to see you all again. For those of you who may be returning from our RTPK workshop from last month, today we're going to be talking about the Triumph LS Plus, and for those of you who may be joining us for the first time, we're excited to have you with us and hope that we can demonstrate some things for you today that help you to understand the LS Plus a little bit better. I'm amazed as a surveyor by what I'm able to do with the Triumph LS Plus. I'm a surveyor in private practice. I use this equipment daily. I've owned the Triumph LS since 2014, and today I'm using the Triumph LS Plus in my daily business and have been for almost a year now. The results that I'm getting and the capabilities that I've been able to achieve, the results that I've been able to achieve in difficult environments is stunning. Part of that's due to the architecture of the LS Plus and the new ASIC that it has inside, and part of it's due to the incredible signals that we have available to us Today we have roughly double the number of satellites, depending on what part of the world you're in, maybe even more, but at least double the number of satellites that were available to us just a couple of years ago. And those additional satellites have allowed us to do things in Canopy that just seem impossible just a couple of years ago. So I'm looking forward to taking you on this tour, and with that said, we'll get started. This is my personal receiver that I've had since 2014, and I recently upgraded it from the Triumph LS to the Triumph LS Plus with the plastic back. Has all the same great features that the Triumph LS had as far as portability, environmental ruggedness, the ability to connect to the J-tip or the J-mate, the use with the collapsible monopole. So physically it has all the great characteristics that Javad envisioned when he developed this several years ago.
Cosmetically, the Triumph LS Plus looks very similar to the standard Triumph LS that you've known for several years now. It still has the same great large touchscreen that's easily viewable in the sunlight, surrounded by hardware buttons that you can use in adverse conditions, ports for external cellular antenna, UHF antenna, and GNSS antenna, as well as Ethernet and power, or 2 SIM card slots, micro SD card slot, and you'll notice this new backing that's a little bit larger, protrudes a little bit more than the standard LS did. This allows for the improved Wi-Fi range and Bluetooth range that is significantly longer and very handy for connecting to the base when you want to stay in your work vehicle in inclement weather, or connecting to a Wi-Fi hotspot from a longer distance or perhaps a weaker signal. You're going to be able to do that much easier with the longer range Wi-Fi that's available in the LS Plus. It also allows for better connection to the Javad J-mate, which communicates through the Wi-Fi as it's constantly sending the image observed from the J-mate to the screen of the Triumph LS Plus. But it has all of the great features that Javad originally designed in the Triumph VS and Triumph LS, as far as the portability, the internal cameras and tilt correction and all of these sorts of things, the internal compass, which allows you to collect offset points much more easily, or navigating to stake points much more easily. All of these things are available standard in the Triumph LS Plus, just like they are in the Triumph LS.
So today we're going to demonstrate the Triumph LS Plus in two different environments. Neither of these environments are impossible, but they both would, in my view, represent fairly difficult environments. And we're going to see how the LS Plus is able to produce so much better results faster than other systems on the market, and even the Triumph LS, which has been a venerable workhorse for several years now. We'll see how the Triumph LS Plus compares and see how some of the new tools that are available with multi-constellation corrections allow us to work even faster in difficult environments.
Our first test case scenario is going to be under pine canopy. As I mentioned earlier, we're not really looking for an impossible shot to show you today, but we do want to show you something that is difficult. And I can say that just a couple of years ago, collecting a point in pine canopy like this may take a very long time. There's something about pine canopy, surveyors who work under coniferous trees can tell you, there's something about pine canopy that makes GNSS work much more difficult. You can see the Triumph LS Plus there barely in the trees. just kind of giving you an idea of what this environment looks like that we're going to be demonstrating in this presentation. Here you can see just barely the LS Plus there. And you can't quite see the LS Plus in that picture, but it's about right there. And for this test case, we're going to be using the Triumph 3 that's transmitting RTCM 3.2 MSM 3 short, has all 4 constellations, and we're going to be transmitting that over TCP via cellular. Here's an overhead shot where you can see about where the Triumph 3 base is and about where the Triumph LS Plus is. So for those of you who are familiar with the Triumph LS and working with the Triumph LS and Canopy, you're probably familiar with the boundary profile. Now the boundary profile worked on the premise that you can get a fix now, and then in 3 minutes, 180 seconds, you can repeat that fix, and if that repeat fix matches your initial fix, then the fix was very likely to be good, had a high probability of being a good fix. The problem with that was, a lot of times when you're in Canopy, repeating that fix after 180 seconds may take much longer than 180 seconds. It could be that the starting fix was bad, or it could be the fix at 180 seconds was bad, or it may just take a much longer time than 180 seconds to repeat that fix. But if a person was patient enough to wait for whatever period of time it required to repeat that fix, so long as it was more than 180 seconds, then they could feel a great deal of confidence in their results. And what we were really looking for in that 180-second time frame was just a minute change in the satellite geometry so that those multipath signals would bounce a little bit differently than they had 180 seconds prior. The great thing is that today, with so many satellites available and satellite signals available, that we can divide these satellites up in between engines, and if engine 1 fixes on one group of satellites and engine 2 fixes on another group of satellites, that the probability of those 2 fixes being correct is extremely high. It's as if we've waited for the satellite geometry to change without actually needing to wait. We can do it all simultaneously. And this brings us to the verification technique that I'm going to be sharing with you today. A very powerful technique. And for now, we're calling it the variety counter. So let's take a look at an example of using variety on our Pine Canopy test site. Before getting into the details of what variety does, let's just go ahead and collect a point and see how the variety speeds up collection. There. From the time I pressed the start button to the time the observation was verified was 2 seconds. This point is fully verified at 2 seconds. I have absolute confidence based on the testing that I've done of thousands and thousands and thousands of points now in Canopy environments just like this one, that the variety, when set appropriately, is completely reliable in this environment with very short observation times. Let's take a look at some of the settings that I have for this action profile. You'll notice that I've only got one epoch required and no minimum time span or any of the other time requirements, just one epoch. I've got the signals variety set to 1.3, and for this I have RTPK switched off. So the only condition is for signals variety to reach 1.3. No verification, no validation. As I mentioned earlier, One of the reasons that Variety is able to work is because we have such an abundance of satellites, and not just satellites, but new signals. And as we can see here, the stronger satellite signals are indicated by blue, and those that are affected by that overhead canopy are shown in red and green. And we can see that the Beidou satellites and the Galileo satellites, very strong, great signal to noise ratios coming through those tree limbs. So we've got better signals and an abundance of them. And using those signals in an intelligent strategy allows us to get to a verification much, much more quickly than we were able to do with just GPS and GLONASS alone. Here we're looking at the engine screen, the RTK engine screen for the Triumph LS Plus. You'll note that it has 4 engines, and as I mentioned earlier, with the new ASIC for the Triumph LS Plus, each one of these engines has its own processor. Each one of the engines at the top, you'll notice, have 4 flags. The first flag represents GPS, the second GLONASS, the third Galileo, and the fourth Beidou. And you'll notice that each one of these engines is using different groups of signals and different groups of constellations and satellites for its own processing. For example, under the GPS flag, under Engine 1, we have 7 CA code signals that are being used. We have 3 P1 code signals that are being used, no P2s. Then row D is for L5, so we have 3 signals that are being used from L5, and then we have L2C, 4 signals of L2C. So each one of these represents different signals from the different constellations, and you can see that they're very different from one another. Very few signals on Engine 1 are being used with Engine 2, so there's very little overlap. These two are highly uncorrelated with one another. So a fix on Engine 1 and a fix on Engine 2 already shows a lot of independence in those solutions. So variety is going to accumulate as different engines acquire a fixed solution. The engines don't need to acquire their fixed solution simultaneously. There can be a fixed solution now, and then a few seconds later, another fixed solution from a different engine, or even the same engine, maybe using different signals later, and the variety can accumulate based on that new fix. A single engine fix will not increase the variety counter, though. It will stay at 0 until that fix is reacquired with different signals or another engine fixes. The more difference there is in the signals that are being used in that engine, the higher the variety is going to accumulate. If the signals are very similar or the same in a repeat fix, the variety will not accumulate. So we're going to go ahead and hit the start button. And we see right off we got a 2 engine fix and the variety jumped up to 0.88. And now we're at a +1. The only requirement for this observation is that it goes to 1.3, and currently the variety is at 1.0. Until it gets to that 1.3, the observation will just continue to accumulate epochs. And we're still waiting for the variety to go from that 1.0 up, and there we went to 1.67. And with that switch to 1.67, the profile automatically ends and presents us with the accept and reject. Again, as mentioned earlier, we can have great confidence in this observation at only 39 seconds in pine canopy. Using an LS with GPS and GLONASS only, we'd have needed to wait a minimum of 180 seconds to use the boundary profile so that we could see that repeat fix give us that verification. And there's no guarantee that we'd have even gotten that repeat fix at 180 seconds. So already we're well below the time required to take this observation and be confident in it with other systems. Now, this demonstration isn't meant to be a formal test. The time that I've observed isn't long enough to do something like that, but this has been going on for about 2 hours now, and this is the screen capture that shows the cluster of points that I've collected. And you can see from this screen that I was able to collect 230 points in that 2 hours, roughly 30 seconds per point. And we can see the precision broken down into horizontal and vertical percentiles. And about 95% we see 0.083 feet and 0.14 feet, which would be 2.5 centimeters horizontal and 4.3 centimeters vertical at that 95% level. Now we'll turn our attention to another test location. This is a backyard point. And as I mentioned earlier, we're not looking for impossible locations, we're looking for difficult locations. And the neat thing about this particular test is that we're actually going to use an external GNSS antenna for this test, connected to a Triumph LS Plus that also has a splitter attached to it, and the antenna is also connected to a standard LS. Over the past several days, I've collected approximately 18,000 points in this test site. And of those 18,000 points, not one single bad fix has been stored with a variety of 1.3 or higher. The variety with the Triumph LS Plus is an exciting new way of verifying a shot because it's fast and extremely reliable. In this last test that I did, I collected 3,000 points, and I set it up specifically to accept and begin again with a variety of 1.3. And between each observation, I forced the engines to reset, so it wasn't just continuing to work off of the fix that it had already had. It was having to start again and get a new fix. And with that configuration, we see that in those 3,000 points, that on average, it took about 23 seconds to get to that variety of 1.3. 95% of the points that I collected in this test, 95% of them were collected within 40 seconds. So the vast majority even were within 40 seconds of clicking the start button. We knew that we had the right answer. 95% of the points that were collected horizontally were within 0.79 feet or 2.4 centimeters horizontally from the average, and vertically 95% were within 0.173 feet or 5.3 centimeters. So still fantastic precision for such a rough environment and very fast. By comparison, I did run the standard LS with GPS and GLONASS in this environment using the boundary profile. If I were surveying this location, the boundary profile would be the method that I would use with a standard LS running GPS and GLONASS. And the time required for this was 95% of the observations required 570 seconds. So just a 9.5 minutes compared to 40 seconds in this solution. So much, much faster, the variety with the Triumph LS Plus than the old standard of the Triumph LS plus GPS and GLONASS only using the boundary profile.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope this has been informational to you and helps you to understand a bit more about the Triumph LS Plus. I also want to thank the development team at Javad GNSS for continuing to develop such an amazing piece of technology that helps me as a surveyor to be even more productive in the field and in my business every day. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Shawn, for this presentation. We will, and actually thank you on behalf of the development team for this good work in our direction. We will always have a pleasure to cooperate with you. And we will start from a bunch of questions that we have already. And most of them, as I see, is probably answered, but I will try to combine them together. That number of people are interested about how this RTPK feature works in this Triumph LS Plus. What is the profile settings for hard canopy environment? What is the best practice to use RTPK? Also, Kerry Albright is asking about so what is super engine stands for exactly, but and consider some usage of Triumph LS Plus in conjunction with the Triumph 2 rover mode, Triumph 3 base mode, JMate unit. And what I see, it's a question is related to what the transport of corrections should be for hard canopy. Can they use UHF modems, or is difficult answer? Yeah, please go ahead.
Sure. So one, let me talk just briefly about RTPK. And here I have a screen capture. This is from that backyard environment that we showed in the presentation. And again, 95% of those observations only required 40 seconds. But the reason that I broke it down that way is because, you know, there are times in the day where for whatever reason, you have some outliers. You know, as a general rule, I would say 40 seconds for that observation. Same with the point under pine canopy. But that doesn't mean that all of them are going to take 40 seconds. For some reason, you know, things are just wrong for that particular technique, and it may take longer. Here we have a screen capture that was recorded at 284 seconds. So this is just a bit less than 5 minutes on this point. And from it, we can see the lead group shown there in blue has 256 epochs, a time of 105 seconds. It repeated the fix once, and the variety is 0. So apparently only one engine has been able to create that one group, which is not enough to give us that variety that we talk about in this presentation. But RTPK was able to get a solution, and we see in the center of the screen where it says RTPK fix, and then we see that number 4 in parentheses, and then we see residuals past it. Well, the 4 in parentheses means that that RTPK solution has been able to repeat itself 4 times. It's taken that 284 seconds and broken it up into smaller segments, and 4 of those smaller segments have agreed with each other. So the RTPK has demonstrated to us that it has verified itself. And then we look at the residuals here, and we see that we have residuals of about 3.5 hundredths, 1/10 of a foot, and 16 hundredths of a foot. So about 1 centimeter, 3 centimeters, and 5 centimeters. And going from this, even without variety, I feel very confident at this point in storing this observation with confidence. So the variety, I think, is probably, based on my testing anyway, generally speaking, going to be the fastest, most efficient way to verify a position. But if you have RTPK, I would very much have that turned on, and then I would watch for both, either looking to see the variety get to that 1.3 and RTPK showing an agreement, showing itself to be in agreement. I think that's the absolute gold standard with the Triumph LS Plus and demonstrating that you have a good fix. Or if RTPK, just for whatever reason in that environment, can't get the fix, but the variety is able to accumulate to 1.3, I would feel confident in that. Or vice versa, if, as in this case, variety has not been able to get up to even above 0 in this case, but RTPK has agreed with the RTK, then I would accept that shot as well. So you still have some flexibility in how you use the Triumph LS Plus to give you those verified positions. But generally speaking, for my profiles, I'm going to have RTPK switched on and variety set to that 1.3. And then hopefully I'm going to see both of those come together by the end of the collection, and I'll have all kinds of confidence in that position before I walk away.
Yeah, okay, please ask questions. You can type it or raise a hand to be able to ask anything by the voice. While thinking, yeah, Shawn.
I was going to say, the other thing that I wanted to touch on that it kind of came up in the questions was communication. So
Yeah.
I've been using the Triumph 3 broadcasting over cellular, and then at the LS, I've actually been using a hotspot and getting those corrections from the Triumph 3 that way. So it's cellular to cellular basically. And I've been just really, really pleased with that approach. Of course, not everyone has a great cell network available to them in their work environments, at least. And so that's not always an option. And UHF still is a very good option for RTK. With all the corrections or with all the satellites that we have available now, the corrections are getting pretty dense. But I've worked with UHF in the same setup with the Triumph 3 broadcasting out over UHF. The one thing I would recommend on that is when you're using that multi-constellation correction, that RTCM 3.2 MSM3 short, that you're going to want to set the modulation to D8 PSK, D8 PSK. We've forever used DQ PSK with narrowbanding and GPS plus GLONASS only corrections, but with the increased load that is required with the multi-constellation corrections, we really need to run at D8 PSK in order to be able to squeeze all those messages into that 1 second transmit period.
Okay, maybe you can tell something about what it stands behind Super Engine name.
Absolutely. So with the addition of the additional constellations and the additional signals in those constellations, the processing overhead grew quite a bit. And Eugene, you could probably answer this a little bit better, but doubling the number of satellites pretty much as we have, adding Beidou and Galileo, it didn't double when you put those into an engine, it doesn't just double the processing requirements, it exponentially increases the processing requirements. And I don't know what that exponential factor would be, but I know that it's not just requiring double the processor to be able to process all of those signals into one engine. So
correct.
With the standard Triumph LS, we had 6 engines in it for GPS and GLONASS, and those 6 engines all used one processor basically to be able to do their processing. But based on the number of signals and the power of the processor, it was perfectly fine. The 6 engines could easily handle their processing multiple times per second even, without any trouble with that processor. But once we doubled that satellite count, it made an exponential demand on the processor. And in the Triumph LS Plus, each one of those processing engines, rather than being splitting a processor, they each have their own processor inside the ASIC to be able to process independently from one another and not share resources. And because of that, the processors are able to work with more data faster than what we could with the standard LS. And the standard LS is still very capable with being able to run multi-constellation, and it's more efficient with multi-constellation than just GPS and GLONASS alone. But the Triumph LS Plus is even more capable and more efficient with those multi-constellation corrections coming in. So the super engines faster and more potent to be able to deal with all that data. And while we're talking about those constellations and engines, we talk about engines a lot and probably don't describe exactly what's going on with those. But basically, an engine is a program. It's an algorithm, and so in this case, each one of those programs is able to work with its own processor. Instead of having 6 programs running simultaneously off of one processor like the standard LS did, you have 4 programs that are running each on its own processor. So much faster that way. And Javad, when we first started looking at what exactly are we going to do with all these signals now that they're available, Javad, I recall saying that really once you get past about 13 satellites in an engine, those additional satellites are really no help, they just become redundant. So instead of piling all those signals into one engine and dividing it up into 4, as we see with this variety, it's really turned out to give us some amazing capabilities. One, all those signals are actually being used. There's no redundancy in terms of excess signals that really don't help the solution. Since they're being divided up by these 4 different engines, they're able to deliver a lot more robust results for us.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's very fair words about the performance and what is the difference between previous ASIC and new one. And right, it's the new one is outperformed the previous one. So that's the one of the part contributed into the performance of Triumph LS unit itself. So I don't know, maybe Shawn, you can try to compare old Triumph LS and standard Triumph LS. We call it old one because we are heading forward, and this is the next generation that we are working at the moment. So if you compare, for example, performance in the forest with old one and new one, what you can say, how that from the time perspective is differ from standard solution?
That's a great question. So first, one of the comparisons that I really didn't mention in the presentation that I'd like to mention now is let's start with just your Triumph LS with GPS and GLONASS. Maybe you've got a Triumph 2 or a Triumph 1M or Triumph 1 base that only has GPS and GLONASS only. That was and still is just an amazing system. I've used that for 6 years now to produce results in really miserable environments. So I've just been really pleased with what that system is capable of. But if you take that system and then you give it multi-constellation corrections, which would probably require either an upgrade to your base or a new base, depending on what base it is that we're talking about, If you've got a Triumph 2, we're probably talking about, upgrading to a Triumph 1M or Triumph 3. If you have a Triumph 1M already, it's just an upgrade cost to activate the tracking for Galileo and Beidou. But whatever route you take to get the multi-constellation corrections to the Triumph LS running with the multi-constellation 6-engine profile, from my testing, I think it's fair to say that would be at least twice as fast in canopy over the GPS plus GLONASS only when using this variety approach. So it's quite a bit faster just looking at a standard LS. But then when you take LS Plus and add it into the equation, so let's say that you have a standard LS and you upgrade that LS to an LS Plus, and you get a base that's capable of transmitting those multi-constellation corrections. I believe, based on my testing, it's going to be twice as fast at least over the standard LS with multi-constellation. So maybe 25% or reducing 75% of the time required in canopy over a standard LS with GPS and GLONASS only. So basically, each step that you take, you're cutting your occupation times by about half, based on what I've been seeing in these tests. So tremendous performance gains in canopy going to that Triumph LS Plus with multi-constellation corrections. And of course, I should also add that when we talk about multi-constellation corrections, 3 constellation corrections, so maybe GPS, GLONASS, and Galileo, is an improvement. You're going to see improvement with that. You're going to be able to use this variety counter with that. But with the fewer satellites, that gives the satellite or the engines less options to be unique from one another. So it's going to be a little bit harder to get to those variety counts as fast as having all 4 constellations. So I do highly recommend, if at all possible, getting corrections that include all 4 constellations, not just 3. There will be a performance difference there.
Thank you. Can you highlight a little bit settings which are used for profile, because a variety counter which you use in this scenario, how that does it replace in any way all previous settings that we have before, like confidence level and this kind of settings in profile? So what do you think the best solution? What do you think is the optimal way to get this confidence in shortening that point?
Based on my testing, I would say absolutely. Now, I want to stress that this is particular to multi-constellation correction. So if you're running GPS and GLONASS, still today your best option is going to be that boundary profile, where it's repeating the fix at the beginning of the observation, then it's running for 180 seconds, smoothing, and then that validate at the end, repeating the fix. The variety is not going to be any help to GPS plus GLONASS only solutions. But once we get into multi-constellation, where the engines have more independence from one another, then we see that variety easily outpaces our previous approach to verification using the confidence and the validate, and is just as reliable as that. So it's faster, it's more reliable, and from my testing, it doesn't give up anything in terms of precision. So we don't lose anything, we just gain with that variety. Now, having said that, in the demonstration that we have here in this presentation, I only looked at variety, so I didn't have any other additional requirements in there, because I wanted to demonstrate just how fast that bare bones approach with a variety of 1.3 can be. But in practice, I would probably go ahead and add some requirement for epics, maybe 100 epics or more, depending on just your your level of requirement for precision, because I feel like having more epochs for the receiver to average over time is probably going to contribute to a bit better precision. Might not be you know, a huge difference, but I think over time you'll be able to mean out the bit of precision that you'll have in the position you know, that you have, instead of that single epoch at times. So that would probably be about the only change that I would make. And again, I would in most cases have RTPK turned on. For a precise topo approach, I would likely lean towards just having the variety turned on. So those would be kind of the positions where you want it basically as fast as you can get it with some check on it. And you could even look toward dropping that variety down perhaps as low as 0.75 for a precise topo style shot. That seems to me to, in these kind of canopy environments that we've tested here, has about a 99.97% reliability. So you'd run into about 3 out of 10,000 points that may get past a 0.75 setting. But if you're just working around light canopy, the likelihood of that 0.75 producing a bad fix, I think, is going to be very, very small. And, you know, if you're leaning more towards production over reliability and verification, and you feel like you can get enough points to recognize those outliers by some other means, using distance to last, or when you get into the office and you start mapping things out and you have enough extra points that you can see those few occasional outliers, then you may even drop that variety down to say 0.75 and be able to work even faster and still have a hedge on the reliability of your shots, you know, just with a little bit less reliability than the 1.3 would offer.
Okay, we have Wayne Henshaw is raising a hand to say something to us, and then we have a question from Glenn.
Okay, sounds great.
So Wayne, if you muted yourself, just unmute your microphone and you will be able to ask. Okay, while Wayne resolving his issue, let's read a question from Glenn.
Sure.
Misleading, the variety requirement in just 1 or 2 seconds. Would it, let me see, would an RTPK result be valid?
Not likely in canopy. Most likely the RTPK in a canopy environment is going to require more time. So, you know, again, this demonstration was really just to show how fast variety can work. But if you're wanting to use RTPK, I did one test on the backyard that we show here. Let's see. And typically speaking, in this particular profile that I used, I required a variety of 0.75. So it was even faster than the 1.3 would have been. I used a variety of 0.75, and then I also required that RTPK be in agreement. And 95% of the shots were done within 330 seconds. So it took about 5.5 minutes for RTK and RTPK to come into agreement and be able to pass off. I'm not saying that to say I would not use that approach. I think it's still good, especially if you're wanting that, you know, really solid feel for the results. And then 68% of them processed out in 50 seconds. So you can see that the majority of them were less than a minute. But then once you get to, you know, kind of that high, almost all of them category, it'll be about 5 minutes in this particular environment. So no, Glenn, to answer your question, variety is probably going to get to a result in most cases faster than RTPK will. I showed that screen capture just a moment ago where the opposite was actually true. Our RTPK was able to get to a result where variety was not, but generally speaking, variety is going to get there before RTPK will. So, but if you have the settings set to where RTPK and RTK must agree, then it won't matter. The observation will continue to go until RTPK and RTK agree with each other, even if variety has been satisfied. So you could set that up to where it's requiring both of them, and you don't have to worry that RTK will go faster than RTPK.
Wayne is asking by question. He sent it directly to me, so I forwarded to. He's asking, what of confidence does one get with Triumph LS Plus when only one engine is working? A very interesting case scenario. I don't
know. With only one engine. Yeah, so with only one engine working, you're going to see a loss in confidence, particularly with this variety, because it will never increment with only one engine working. And I'm not sure, Wayne, if you already have an LS Plus or not. If I only saw one engine working, I would probably start doing some investigating to find out why I only had one engine working. There are times where that may occur, but generally speaking, you're going to have more than one engine with the LS Plus able to get a fix. But at that case, again, going back to that screen capture that we had that primary solution was with one engine on that RTK, but RTPK stacked up with it. So in that case, I would have stored it and been perfectly satisfied saying that RTK and RTPK agreed with one another.
Hunter Edwards is asking about any changes in Triumph LS Plus according to lift feature, tilt feature.
Right. So in the LS Plus, there's been no change from the standard LS in terms of the tilt sensors or the internal compass, at least not that I'm aware of. Eugene may be able to.
Yeah, there are no changes in this direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's gonna be next version, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, please don't hesitate to ask your questions, guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, while you're thinking, I will remind you that Triumph LS Plus can be upgraded from standard Triumph LS. So you need just go to our website, and if you have ordered it previously, you just can use upgrade functionality to have a reasonable price for upgrading this unit to Triumph LS Plus. It is not kind of software upgrade, and you have to send this unit to factory anyway, because we need to replace hardware parts. Also, there is an option to replace batteries too. So so far I see more questions from Randy Green.
Okay, and I'll just add to what you were saying there, Eugene, about the program. That was exactly what I did, was upgraded my standard LS up to LS Plus. It was a receiver that I acquired in 2014, I believe. And it's amazing to me that I was able to upgrade it and continue to enjoy the latest and greatest that Javad has to offer in a piece of hardware that I bought 6-7 years ago. So it really is a great program. I was shocked when Javad offered it, and it's just really great to be able to continue to get more out of that initial investment that I made so many years ago. So
yeah, I'll try to stay on your side. Actually, how long did you wait for upgrade since the moment you send unit and get it back upgraded?
With the typically I think the lead time is about 2 weeks on that, but you probably need to check with our with either whoever it is that you're buying through or directly with the factory to see what their turnaround time is. We do offer a rental for those who are going through that upgrade process. It's a one-time fee, so you can rent a receiver while yours is in the shop being upgraded. And it's a little bit tricky question too, because they're going to put it on the bench and they're going to fully test it. So they may or may not find that some component inside is not up to the to the standards, and they'll communicate that with you and say, do you want to address that issue while it's here and things like that. So some of those kinds of things are variables, and of course, I hate to even bring it up, but we are still in the midst of a pandemic, and at times that can interfere with turnaround times. But generally speaking, I think they've done a really good job at staying at about 2 weeks on the upgrade. So
yeah, okay, just hint up the people who is trying to perform anything before season, they may do it and schedule anything.
sure.
We have a question from Randy Green about standard LS according to engines actually. So what do you think preferable, 6 engine over 2 or?
Before I upgraded to the LS Plus, I was using the standard LS, and I didn't have any formal testing to tell me which one was better. Just kind of based on my feel, I felt like at the time the 2 engine was better than the 6 engine, and maybe in the way that I was using those engines, that might have been true, that the 2 engine was better than the 6 engine in the style that I was using it. But using this new variety approach, and with that 6 engine, I will say this, variety of 1.0 actually seems to be really successful on that 6 engine, as opposed to 1.3. 1.3 is going to take a while, but with the 6 engine, it seems as though a variety of 1.0 is very reliable, and the 6 engine is able to get to that variety score much more quickly than the 2 engine is. So if you're going to go with the variety approach that I've outlined here, I would recommend on that 6 engine multi-constellation profile on the standard LS to use a variety of 1.0, and I would say use that 6 engine over the 2 engine. So that's a great question.
Okay, and I think we answered on the question about turnaround upgrade time for Hunter from Hunter. Okay, so I would remind that we have for those who want to try RTPK option, for example, for free, we have Cinderella program, which gives the ability to put an upgrade order and get 2 weeks for free. Please cooperate to our sales team. You will be able to do it, to try and decide, okay, this is if you are working in hard canopy and this is what you think is saving you, yeah, please try and buy that. So also we have our questions system on the website. We have our support forum, which is actually related to have discussions about the products we produce in the field, and how that performs, what is opinion between professional land surveyors. This is all shared there. We don't do anything. People are just communicating free and open, and you should be confident that that's whatever they say, it's there. It's we are not going to interfere with this process. We just use this forum for support. We use it for additional source of information and the source of improvement in our products we design. And also sometimes it is kind of secondary source of solving your urgent problems in the field. And those who use this forum knows what that means for them. Please subscribe to our newsletter. We have social media also. Just welcome to the global web page and subscribe to all that sources. We have this materials publishing usually first or second day after the webinar, and you should expect this. So please welcome to website and see news and where to get the recorded stream of this webinar. Please ask any questions. Yet we have a few minutes of webinar. All right. Well then, thank you so much to everyone who joined us today. This was the second workshop dedicated for Triumph LS product, and we will continue to work in this direction. You will see other webinars soon. Track our news on the website and join us next time. Thank you so much, and have a good day then. Goodbye. Thank you, Shawn. Thank you, Shawn, very much for this webinar.
Thank you all for coming. I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Shawn. Thank you for good words and direction of development team. I think I can tell on behalf of the development team that it's always joining to work with you and improve the products. So we can start answering on some questions. Two of them we have from Volga Janos. He's interested in how he's going to get the Triumph LS. So that's probably Shawn, do you want to answer or me?
Tell you what, go ahead and answer that one if you don't mind.
This one I think is better to answer to me. So we have a website which give you ability to order brand new Triumph LS Plus, or if you have previously purchased already Triumph LS, you can use upgrade option, which is cheaper than buy it as a single product. So you just need to be registered on the website and go and place the order. So our sales team will care about the latest stages.
And Eugene, that's so exciting that, you know, with mine, I had that Triumph LS in the video. That's my personal receiver that I use basically every day and have since 2014. And then Javad made the offer for his customers to send in their Triumph LS and have it upgraded to an LS Plus. So I didn't have to, you know, buy a brand new receiver and put my old one on the shelf. I was able to send it in and get it upgraded to basically the latest and greatest receiver on the planet. And, you know, with technology that I've had since 2014. So that's really amazing that he made that offer. So
yeah, before we start answering on the questions, which is going to be populated already, I just want to add a couple of words about the hardware itself, because it's generally it's a slightly different product comparing to Triumph LS, and what you get in Triumph LS Plus, you get new ASIC that we have. This is the latest ASIC that we have at the moment. It has more channels. It has full system receiving antenna, which is limited for Triumph LS standard one, and you got a better performance of the chip itself. Plus, you have internal antennas which are hidden for, and you can use device in the forest with best performance, not thinking about the difficulties in the bushes and the deep forest when you go through the trees for the point to take a shot.
And as I recall, Eugene, the power consumption with the new ASIC is even less than the old ASIC, so it's more powerful processing at a lower power consumption. So
yeah, but if you know that batteries, this is the latest thing that people may even complain because they have such a big number of hours of working per day. So, you know, nobody even asks about that and remember that okay, they have any kind of batteries troubles or they have to replace it or charge or do anything with the batteries. So we have more time for Triumph LS. And by the way, if you have Triumph LS and you want to upgrade it to Triumph LS Plus, we have an option to upgrade battery too. So just in case if you are kind of old user of it's time to replace batteries.
yeah,
So we have a question.
And I mentioned it in the video too, but I just wanted to highlight again the range that's the improvement in range with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi is just so significant. I often connect up to that Triumph 3 base by Bluetooth from, you know, easily 30 meters, and I've heard of people going even, you know, 200 meters between the LS Plus and a Triumph 3 connected by Bluetooth, and the Wi-Fi similarly has an extended range, a very long range. So those things definitely add to the benefits of having the LS Plus over the standard LS.
Yeah, then the main purpose of that is that there is a kind of hardware changes we did for to make Wi-Fi and Bluetooth work simultaneously with the same with different antennas. So now it's not the problem at all. So we increase the power productivity in the field and the speed of the channels and have it much more stable than before. So probably let's start to answer questions, right? We have some Kai Zimmerman, some Shawn. Could you please, Shawn, provide complete action profile for Triumph LS Plus? You use it in this forest. So yeah, see, yeah, people are interested in the settings mostly, I guess.
Yeah. And the video talks a bit about, you know, this variety score that we have, and you know, and the probably the only profile change that I would make is to require a certain number of epochs recorded. I intentionally set it to 1 to show just how fast it can verify a position, but if I were actually doing production in the field, I would up those epochs somewhat, just because I think a longer duration with more epochs would probably improve the precision of the observation a little bit, because you would be averaging the position. But you know, in testing that we've done, it's probably not a huge difference even adding more epochs. So you know, that might be just kind of up to the user, but really the profile settings that we have here, setting that variety to 1.3, that seems to be the magic setting that really allows us to get those verified positions quickly. And I'm going to try to show something just very quickly. Give me just one moment here. Right, so this is a screen capture of a point that I was collecting, and it took a while for the variety to accumulate just because of the situation and the environment. But what we see here is in this screen capture, I had RTPK turned on, and I would, if I had RTPK enabled, which I do in most cases, I would have that set up in that action profile. And here we see that the RTPK and RTK agreement, looking at that middle part of the screen, you see that we have, this is in feet, about 3.5 hundredths of a foot and a tenth, and then 16 hundredths of a foot in agreement. So we have about 1 centimeter and 3 centimeters horizontally, and vertically about 5 centimeters. So if I were in the field and I couldn't get to variety, but I had RTPK and I saw this on my screen, I would go ahead and stop and store, because for RTK and RTPK to agree with each other is also a really reliable form of verification. And we can see here in this new screen that the RTPK fix shows that it repeated this solution 4 times in the 284 seconds that it recorded. So you see where it says RTPK fix, and then it has that number 4 in parentheses, indicating that there were 4 times that RTPK processed and came up with basically the same answer in this 284 seconds. So kind of going back to that original question asking about settings, another setting that I would have that differs from the video is to have RTPK turned on and to use that RTPK as a form of verification. So most cases, I would say that variety is going to signal a good fix before RTPK will have a chance to process. But in those rare instances that variety takes a while to accumulate, RTPK may get us to a verified solution faster. So using one or the other can be a great tool, a great asset.
Yeah, Kai is asking also how about other settings, consistency and confidence level. What is the variety? Is it a replacement, or, as I understand, or what is it?
Yes, I believe so. I don't see any real benefit to maybe to confidence, but honestly, what I'm seeing, even turning confidence off, I don't know that there's a huge benefit. About the only thing I would see confidence helping us with is that it might help to keep the receiver from chasing a bad fix early on, because it has to repeat a few times before it starts. But the new super engines that we have produce more reliable fixes, I think, than what we were able to do with the standard LS with GPS and GLONASS only. So those initial fixes, it can still start off with a bad fix, which is the reason for verifying in the first place, but it's less likely now, I think, with these super engines than what we'd experienced in the past. So for me, I would probably leave confidence off, the verification turned off, and just go to variety. Now, it's important to note that variety requires this abundance of satellites and satellite signals, so that there's plenty of difference between the engines. So if you're only getting GPS and GLONASS corrections, then variety is probably, well, it will not be the tool that you want to use. You'll still want to use the confidence and consistency and validation that we have in that boundary profile.
Okay, it seems Kai got an answer. Yeah, anybody can say or comment or have questions? Yeah, baselines. It's interesting about how long baseline can be for what is difficult to say in such difficult environment or long. Okay, proposed.
In this sort of environment, I haven't really tested really long range, but I feel confident in saying that 10 kilometers you'd easily be able to work.
We rather can say is it how that's actually affects because if you have no corrections transmission issues, right, when you get corrections inside of the canopy or under canopy or forest area, for example, if there are no issue with corrections, how it might affect on the baseline.
Right.
That's one of the junior questions here.
Right. So, you know, in that case, we'd probably be talking about sending corrections via cellular. And with that being the case, I feel confident that at 10 kilometers, your results in canopy would be very similar to what you would have even in this case where the baseline distance was about 100 meters from the base. I don't think you would see a whole lot of difference. And it may even be further than that. I'm being a bit pessimistic by saying 10 kilometers, simply because I don't have a whole lot of experience with baselines much further than that in canopy. So could be
Kai is
further.
also, yeah, Kai is also trying to guess that it might be related to Triumph 3 as a base, just because the Triumph 3 is a good base. But in fact, it's just multi-constellation base, right? We don't care about quality. We care about quality, but it's not the Triumph 3. It can be different receiver.
Right. And I neglected to mention in the presentation that second set of that second test area, the backyard test area, that was actually using a Delta 3 receiver, which has the Triumph 2 ASIC, which would be the same ASIC that's found in the Triumph 1M and the standard Triumph LS. So it doesn't even have the Triumph 3 chipset that we used in the Triumph 3, of course, for our corrections. So it wasn't even using the latest and greatest base that we have on that test.
Right. While thinking about questions, I perhaps then tell a little bit more about our media and yeah, we are already mentioned on the how we can upgrade the Triumph LS. Also, don't forget that we have a newsletter that you can subscribe easily on our front page on the website and get our latest news about the products, about the events. You can, if you are currently Java GNSS user, you can post your questions to our question system on java.com. Also, we have a support forum, public forum for such land surveyors like Shawn Billings, and where they share opinions about the products, where you can read more information about the practice of use. We do publish some materials from that forum, but if you want to see how real people are working with in the real case scenarios and how they exchange opinion, just subscribe to the forum also and read the messages about different products that we are discussing there. Also, we have our team answering on that threads and questions in terms of supporting. So in case if any problems happens there, we can react immediately or even investigate some urgent cases. So we are always on track of what's going on there. And also, I want to mention on our Cinderella option here, because this is what you can use in practice for improving quality of your system by ordering some additional options like RTPK, which you can try to use for free for about 2 weeks, and it also related to different options and other options, and actually whatever you have available for upgrade in your profile, it is possible to talk to our sales team by emailing and get the best and required terms of use on this option. So if it's you need to exchange a little bit time, we will most likely will allow to do that. And but that depends on the salespeople, and I shouldn't tell more about that here, I guess. So we have a question from Denis Heriton. Do we need to install side cover of time? How do we need to install the side cover of LS Plus? Do we need to sign LS Java GNSS service? Yeah, right. I answered perhaps on this question too, because upgrade of Triumph LS standard to Triumph LS Plus is not just only installing the back cover for antennas. You know, it is a different. In fact, this is a different product. This is a different board and site, and this is different ASIC, and that requires manufacturing work, of course. So you cannot just purchase a back cover with antenna and manually replace this for to convert Triumph LS to Triumph LS Plus. But upgrade is has a very reasonable price, and I think you can watch on that.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a great program.
Is anybody has more questions? Okay, if not, then thank you so much for joining us today. You will get this video links later. We're supposed to publish it on Friday, so please look at the website, watch our YouTube channel, which gonna have this video in the first turn. And thank you for joining again. If not other questions, I want to say thank you so much, Shawn, for this presentation.
And it was great to see everybody again. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll look forward to our next one.